Hey everybody, this is Kris here. Just want to thank you for tuning in to the Legacy Lifestyle Podcast. Wanted to let you know that this week is a special edition. We had a guest at our church, Matthew Rudolph, who talked really through the Jewish feast. And Matthew happens to be a Jewish believer in Jesus, and he really unpacked some of the Old Testament things and the feasts and all that. And I just thought, what an opportunity to really put this out on the Legacy Lifestyle Podcast, just so you can hear a perspective and maybe some of the wisdom that comes from the Old Testament, and particularly on this idea of Sabbath. And so, as you know, we went through a Legacy Lifestyle series talking about the benefits of slowing down, stopping, and resting. And so you're going to hear a little bit of our conversation together. Hope you enjoy it. The second thing is that there's going to be just a small mini hiatus for a couple of weeks. My wife and I are going to be traveling, and some work schedule stuff has changed. So we have to figure out when we're going to actually be able to capture some new content. So I just want to let you know, hopefully this is very, very brief. So make sure you're checking back with us. So with all that said, I hope you enjoy this podcast with Matthew Rudolph. Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of the Big Igloo Podcast. I'm with a good friend of ours at Grace, Matthew Rudolph. How you doing, Matthew?
Great. It's great to be with you today.
Awesome. I want to just say, first off, Matthew is being an amazing sport about this. He walked in a couple days ago. I was like, hey, you want to be on the podcast? And so he said yes. So we're just going to pepper some questions at him, but we're going to have a good time. And listen, we just want to keep this just conversational and stuff. But Matthew, you've been with us the last couple days, kind of going through Shabbat, what that means. You've been going through the feast, what that means for us, keeping Jesus at the center. We're going to get to maybe some of the bonus material, if you will. All right, the director's cut here.
There we go.
But before we do that, why don't you tell us, some of our listeners, viewers may not be aware with just what you do. And so why don't you talk a little bit about yourself, your organization, all that?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Yes, I am a part of an organization called Gateways Beyond International, and really this is the extension or the fruit of Kris growing up in a missionary family. From the time that I was 5 years old, my family first launched into world missions in the nation of India.
Wow.
And formative experiences that just set a course for your whole life. My earliest memories on the mission field have to do with either going to a school learning Hindi on chalk and slate,
oh, wow.
or being in large evangelistic campaigns and just seeing kind of a sea of faces and experiencing at a very young age the reality of the power of God.
Wow.
Coming and seeing all kinds of miracles and people responding to the gospel. It messes you up for life, just when experiencing those things at a young age. And just, I knew from that time that there wasn't an ordinary course of my life. Wow. That I wanted to live this adventure that I saw my parents living. And, a lot of maybe PKs or MKs, missionary kids, they deal with some of the challenges of the hardships they go through, the different experiences, being in different contexts. And something that my parents did so well was that they brought us in as a family to that. It was a call of God, not just on them that we were being dragged into, but that it was a call for our whole family. And what that meant was then they depended on us to also hear the Lord as a part of the family and then be equipped to be able to minister as well. So from a young age, we got thrown in the deep end. We got to experience the joys of missionary life, and also the very real challenges as well. But there was a sense of identity and purpose in it.
It's really interesting that you bring that up, and I've had some experience. In fact, I'm completing a master's program. I went through a cohort with some other people who, a lot of them were kids on the missions field and stuff like that. And I know even just surveying church history, it's really interesting how there were certain ministers that kind of charged into some things full steam ahead, but maybe left their family kind of in the background. Yours is a different story. It's kind of unique. What do you think that was about your parents that, that made them say, no, it's all of us. It wasn't just your mom or your dad,
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the things in response to that is that, my dad's heritage is Jewish. And his understanding, is very much that the faith applies to the whole family unit. In fact, when he came to faith in Jesus and Yeshua as his Savior, it was that sense of a call of faith like Abraham, our forefather. And that was a call on generations. That was a call to family. And so that was always like embedded in our understanding. And interesting enough, as it connects to the topic of the last few days that we've been talking about, is that these rhythms of life that come out of Jewish tradition and also out of the practice that we see in the scriptures for the people of Israel, they are very family-centric. And so whether we were in India or we were in Greece or the different assignments that God gave us, our family unit was gathered around these rhythms of life like Shabbat. And, sometimes a lot of the people, we were like Jews in a very Gentile context. It wasn't like we had a congregation that we were connected to, but we had to draw together because we're on the field, we're on the frontier, and we needed the support of each other. So those rhythms became a stability in where the situation, the culture was changing, language was changing, all of those things. So Shabbat on Friday nights, for me growing up, was this time, like that was an anchor. And it was a gift.
Oh, that's so good. And so that segues perfectly kind of where I want to go. And like I said, over the past couple of days, you've been ministering both at our church and Spirit of Life. And listen, if you have not had the opportunity to see those, you can live stream those, go to carneygrace.com and check those out, especially particularly with the feast. But I kind of want to talk about Shabbat. I got some experience with Shabbat. Some mutual friends of ours actually introduced my wife and I. Actually, they went to Cyprus as a family and served there for a while. And that was something they invited my wife and I in to before we had kids. So before my wife and I had kids. And I remember the father sitting there and blessing his sons, and then and blessing his wife. And then he let me participate, and I didn't have kids, but he, when it came time to bless the wife, I just remember looking into my wife's eyes and just speaking to her what value that she brought to me as her husband. And I remember looking in her eyes, she's got welling up with tears and stuff. And I'm just like, hey, I think this is pretty cool. Right. It was such a rich experience. And I remember thinking, especially like, well, when I have kids, I'm going to do this. Like I want to do this. And, because I thought it was so powerful. Well-intentioned, right? And sure, I'll do this. Well, when I started having kids, of course, life just kicks in, and kind of forgot about it. And then I had the privilege a few years back to actually go do the Fall Feast journey over in Israel, again, with some other folks that And I was over there for a month, and of course, every Shabbat rolled around. We didn't do anything. And to kick things off in that evening, we blessed each other and all that. And I remember just the joy and the celebration. And I just remember just even the community, and the people that were connected to each other. And all of this stuff flooded back with that first experience I had. So when I came home, I told my wife, I said, we really need to do this. And I should just qualify that a little bit with, I just started my journey into seminary, and I was really thankful that we had some professors and stuff that just really stressed, you need to rest. Okay, if you're working on this degree, you got to find that time. There's always going to be things to do, but you need to rest, and really that soul care. And they did really, really well of hammering those things home. But we started rolling that out as a family and practicing it. And I guess for me, I'll speak as an American, but like we wear busy like a virtue.
It's so true.
You know what I mean? And it shows up all the time. I think sometimes we say things like, oh, I'm so busy. Like,
how are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so busy.
As if we have to prove our worth and that we get to exist on planet Earth because we're so busy.
Yeah, it is. And it really has taken this place where it is this virtue that we wear around. Like, I've got to demonstrate this to you. And why don't you like just tell us a little bit about like in Genesis, all right? Because above all, listen, I want to, and you've done such a wonderful job of being with us. Like, you're not trying to like be legalistic. You're not trying to tell people this is what you got to do. But instead, I think you've done a really great job of just portraying how beautiful this is and how, God has done things excellently in his word and has shown us, principles and tools and things that we can use that benefit us. So let's talk about creation. Let's jump in there for a second and talk about creation. So, God's making things. This is good, all that. What? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's really amazing. From a Jewish perspective, really, in teaching and looking at principles for life, we often go back to Genesis 1 to find the pattern and the foundation and how it builds within revealed Scripture as it comes out. So it's a very Jewish framework to go back to Genesis. And I find often when I'm teaching, no matter the topic, there's so much richness right there in the beginning of Genesis. But we have this creation account, the creation week that's taking place, and how God creates a medium by which he can, as the eternal, the uncreated, encounter, interact, have relationship with his creation, and the pinnacle of his creation being mankind. And so we see that 6 days that God is speaking things into existence, and he's creating the heavens and the earth, and it's good, and all that it comes to. And then we find on the seventh day there that he ceases from his work. And we probably read that into that our own modern experience of the busyness of our life, our elevation of productivity, and all of these things, and kind of put it back on God. But we have to be clear from the beginning that there's no lack of resource in God. There's he can't exhaust his energy. He can't work himself to where he needs to rest. But he weaves into the fabric of the creation story a pattern by giving his own example of ceasing from work and his labor and resting. And it says that he sanctified the Sabbath day. He sanctified the day of rest. A lot of times we like to look at it from the perspective there at the end of Genesis 1, where it gives us this account where he says, and he ceased from his labor and he rested, that it's like the master artist, the sculptor, the painter, that kind of thing. There's all the energy, there's the passion, there's investing of what's inside of him into his handiwork. But the moment of completion, the artist will step back and delight in his handiwork. And really, that word, when we talk about Shabbat, it's the idea of rest and then delight. And that they go hand in hand together. The ability to be able to appreciate, and so I like to step back and take a deep breath and revel in his handiwork. So he gave an example for all of creation, not even just for mankind, but there's something when we enter into this rhythm of mostly we're working, we're producing, we're fulfilling the creation mandate to be fruitful. And then we have that rhythm where we stop, we rest, we delight. And maybe the more spiritual thing is not just ceasing from labor, but it's actually entering into what is going to replenish the soul so that their new and fresh creativity comes forth.
No, that's brilliant. And something that maybe some of our listeners don't realize, or if you've not maybe studied ancient Near East and some of the other creation narratives that are out there, it's not like Genesis stands alone as like an origin story. There's other ones that are out there. But what's so interesting about, at least as I understood these things, Genesis is a counter narrative to what's out there. Because there's a lot of other stories that are saying things like we were created to be slaves of the gods. That's very impersonal. The gods don't want, they're warring things out. They're not trying to connect with humanity, but yet Yahweh's different. He's completely different. And yet he's doing these things. This is good. This is good. This is good. And then wants to invite mankind to be with that, which is for the time, and I would argue even still today, right? It's revolutionary.
Absolutely.
And what's really beautiful about even the biblical story is, there really is nothing new under the sun, because we still have idols today. We still fashion. There's still other gods that are demanding our time. And I think sometimes Shabbat, when it's done rightly, and when we understand that it's from this, that our Creator wants this relationship with us, our Creator wants us to even bask and to appreciate the work we've done, right? And He sets that example for us. And when we can set back, it turns into worship.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. In fact, I'll maybe tangent here a little bit, but and help me out if I'm wrong here, but as I understand it, like with when God places man in the garden, it says, to work and to keep, to work and to keep. My understanding is those two Hebrew words can also be translated to worship and obey. Mm-hmm. That's the same Hebrew word that can be translated either way.
Same root.
Yeah, same root. Yeah. And so that's really fascinating that if you look at that and go to worship and obey, it's like, well, that's the story for humanity. That's what we are made for.
Absolutely.
And I love that, like we said about the foundation. So, I guess through the centuries and stuff, you think about, I'll throw out this statement to you. I came across this, that someone once said, if you want to see what you value, examine your time. Mm-hmm. And yet throughout scriptures, we see times and seasons and even things that God has, whether it's the Sabbath, right? And then He tells them, hey, count so many Sabbaths, and then there's going to be this, the feast and things like that. So time matters to God. But I would argue, when it comes to us as people, we are very story centric, right? Even as an American, right? We know, okay, we got the first of the year, New Year's Day, and then we have, it's going to be Memorial Day, and then the 4th of July. So we set times and seasons,
absolutely,
around certain values, right? America, independence, right? Whatever, those are things. But this is really something that goes back to Genesis and well, really the Torah, but yeah. So when it comes to that, thinking about that, what you value, when you think about that statement, that time is an indication of maybe the things that we value.
Absolutely. In the way that we deal with time and relate to time, if we talk about like kind of the modern mindset on this, is like it's this commodity that we're trying to control and to get, and really what we can't add to time.
Right.
All we can do is find the times that are allotted to us, or as in the Song of Moses in Psalm 90, where it says, "Teach us to number our days aright, so that we can gain a heart of wisdom." And the Hebraic understanding of wisdom means wisdom for practical life. It's not esoteric.
Yeah.
It's not highly spiritual. It actually is, wisdom means how we live our life in the healthiest way that God originally intended. And so our times are allotted for us.
Yeah.
It's not a commodity that we can get more of or less of, but it's how we live within that time frame there. And so there's patterns and rhythms.
Yeah.
Kris, like I saw you on the worship team. You're a musician, right?
Right.
And we understand as in music that it's not only what we do, but it's also the space in between.
Yeah.
The rest, right? The
So
pause
true.
between the notes that actually gives the beauty and the diversity to the sound.
Yeah.
So as it is in music, that you have your rhythm of your notes, and then you have the pause and the rest. If everything was the same intensity, if everything had the same rhythm, if everything was constant, it would be maddening.
Yeah.
Right? In music?
Absolutely.
Imagine that note with no pause. Boom, boom, boom,
Right.
boom, boom.
Right.
Like that, you would go crazy eventually. It's like, it's a form of mental torture.
Yeah.
What if we transpose that into the rhythm of our life?
Yeah.
If we don't have those pause moments, we don't have those, we can't get more time or less of it, but what we can do is live intentionally within rhythms and patterns where we have work and then rest.
Yeah.
And in it, God is giving the answer for us how to live the abundance of life, the fullness of life that He has to offer for us. So I think often we're trying to grasp time as something that we can control. We can't control it, less or more of it, but what we can do is learn how to live within that time frame. Ultimately, Genesis 1 and 2 show us that it was a way for us to encounter God and then to partner with God's will in all of creation and the earth. So our work then becomes holy.
Yeah.
And then our rest becomes holy as well as we enter into relationship, creativity, so that we enter back into the patterns of work and rest.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that, because I think it's so human. It's so human of us to think, well, more would be better, if I just had more time. And what you're talking about is really, I think God's heart all along has been for us to be people of wisdom.
Right.
Like you said, I mean, it's really like, no, it's not about more. It's about, it's quality over quantity. God, I think God knew what when he set the sun, moon, and stars, all that, I think he knew what he was doing. And there is a way in which, no, you need this rhythm, because even if I did give you more hours in the day, nature abhors a vacuum. You just fill it with more stuff or whatever. You chase after other things. No, you need these healthy patterns. And go ahead.
Here's a thought to think about. In the scriptures, in the Old Testament, we find that God actually says to Israel that the Sabbath is going to be a covenantal sign between me and you as my people.
Yeah.
By choosing to rest, we are acknowledging that we are not God. By choosing to rest, we're recognizing our place, and we're not allowing our work or time itself to become the idol.
Yeah.
But they are the time frame for encounter with God, and it also puts us back into our place that we are the creation and he's the creator.
Yeah. Which gets back even to the essence of a day. When does a day begin?
Right. Well, so in the Genesis account, you have that it was evening and it was morning. It was the first day. So according to Hebrew reckoning, we start the day with the evening at sundown.
Yeah.
Now, this is kind of, it could be like an interesting aside, except when you think about that in the rhythm of God's design, then it means that, the new day begins in rest, and that maybe our identity as people needs to come out of a place of rest before work. Wow.
Yeah.
I just feel the pleasure of God in even saying that right now. Like, we're not proving our existence, but by it starting with rest, when our bodies go to sleep in the evening and we slow down, our spirit is still alive, available for communion with God, for God to speak in our subconscious, right, through dreams, and to be aware of his presence. And that we start our day by stopping, by resting, and then when we wake, we have a work to do that's in front of us.
Yeah.
It's subtle, but enough of a mindset shift that it can put things in perspective that we say, maybe I have been tethered to a mindset of production in this modern age to prove my value, my worth, and right to exist on planet Earth. Whereas God says, no, this was actually the setting for you to live fully in me. And so I ordained that the day would begin in evening and it would be birthed out of rest.
Yeah, I was reading somewhere, I can't remember where this was exactly, but even the mindset, understanding a more Hebraic mindset of like you said, going to rest, but even as you would rise and the sun would rise, like there's dew on the ground, and it's like, hey, God's already been, he's already prepared this thing for me.
That's right.
And again, the heart of worship that can emerge from that, if you take time to recognize it.
Yes.
Right. If you're intentional about seeing, God, I didn't have to do anything for that dew to appear. I didn't have to do anything for that sun to rise. In fact, the day started not with my productivity, but with my rest, as you said. I think there's just so much.
It lends itself to worship.
It does. It does. And that's what, life is supposed to be about at the end of the day. It's all about him. It's all about worship. And again, I get excited because I think one, I think that the Genesis account, unfortunately, we've either tried to make it a scientific handbook or we've tried to tell other stories with it, when it's like when you just step back and see what's there and see what God's doing. It's amazing how it just opens up and ministers to the human condition, but also who God is. And it's just it's amazing. I just, we'll just kind of bring it to a close here. But I don't know what you've led a discipleship school, and what are some helpful practices, I guess, that you in your students who come from all different walks of life, right? What's your best coaching practices, or how do you help people establish those rhythms? So someone might be listening saying, "This is really beautiful. This is amazing." But I'm just so busy,
Sure.
So, how would you guide or navigate them?
really everything that's going to have value in our life is going to come out of faith, and it's going to come out of intentionality, right? And so sometimes these truths, we stumble into them, and it's just the kindness of God to us. And I would just encourage people, if there's something that the Lord is speaking to you in this, that feel his kindness in it. It's not like something's being put on you, but it's something rather that you get to explore with him and bring it before the Lord. Say, God, open up my eyes in the scriptures to see this pattern and be able to apply it to my life. But our own, like with our discipleship school, we basically, we take the perspective that we're not creating a philosophical program to try to meet the needs of the generation, but rather we go back, well, what's God's ways? And really what's the authenticity that we live out in our own family life? Invite students into that. In many ways, our first discipleship schools were an extension of our dining room table, of our living room, of the space that we would meet as a family to worship and to pray. In the beginning, literally, it was out of my parents' home. And then we added another house and another house to it. And then further on, it grew, and then we multiplied those. But it was our family's rhythm of life that Shabbat was precious to us. And that not only was it like it's something that we felt like that was our way of life, but it was a gift to us that we didn't want to give up. So when we started the discipleship training schools, we would invite the students into our rhythm of life, not to say like, this is how you need to do it, but come and see something that's real, lived out, embodied. Right? And I think a lot of spiritual truth is taught through kind of information without a context, without a body, without being incarnated. And God, when he brought the ultimate truth in the person of Jesus, he put him in a body, right? And so that's the best way for us to be able to really learn, to be discipled, to be transformed.
Absolutely.
And so what we found is as students came around our table, and it's a time of blessing, it's a time of joy, it's a time focused on family and a good meal, and all of these different elements, we saw the Lord, without us praying for, actually healing students from their past experiences, from the brokenness in their families, things like that. And they would go through this period of 6 months with us. And we never once said, you need to go home and observe Shabbat like we do in our Jewish tradition. But I remember at the first school, we'd get like emails a few weeks after the school ended. Hey, can you send me the challah recipe? Can you tell me, like, what was that blessing that you prayed over your sons during that time? And so I gathered my family when I got home, said, we should do a family meal. And they would do it according to their own context. Now, Kris, what's amazing is we had pockets of students in different states and countries, and we never organized this. We never even said anything, and students began on their own accord in different places where there's groups of them to meet. And sometimes they couldn't do it every week, but they would do it. They would do it like once or twice a month, and started implementing that rhythm in their life, not because it was imposed upon them, but because they said, this is healthy for my soul. This is healthy for my life. And it was like it brought other people in to an experience of what they had learned going away to the Gateway Discipleship Training School. And it can extend it to their family and to their community. And 20 years later, there's those Shabbat gatherings around, and it never once came from us saying, like, you should do this or anything like that. But the fruit was in the experience. And then it got multiplied out.
I love it because there's just such a healthy aspect of mentorship there, and I believe mentorship is built into the Bible. We see that. We see those examples. And again, in an age of information, I mean, we're podcasting right now, right? So I love podcasting and stuff, but information's not enough.
Right.
It's not just enough to throw things at people or tell people to do something. It's so amazing because what you just described with your students that was my experience. Somebody invited us in, let us just be part of what they were already doing. I received the life from that and said, I need to do something like this. So if you're listening to this, you're watching this, that's really just my heart, and I think that's Matthew's heart as well. Absolutely. It's like, hey, seek the Lord on these things and find out what he might have you do, but pay attention to where that life, springs up, right? And for me, it was just something as simple as, I think it'd just be good to have a weekly rhythm, at least to tell my wife in front of my kids what she means to me. gentlemen, feel free to do that more than once, but
yes.
but at least to have an appointed time where it's just intentional. And then also for my kids to hear that. Those were things that I just said, that's the kind of dad I want to be. That's the kind of legacy that I want to leave, and even for you, even to hear just a little bit of your story as a missionary's kid, unfortunately, that's not always the story, but what a beautiful example that your family set, including you, bringing you in. I think there's a ton of lessons there. And again, that's healthy mentorship.
Absolutely. Godly families lead to a good picture of discipleship. And we bring others into the family unit, and we just multiply. That was God's pattern in the beginning, from family to family, from generation to generation. It's where we keep it real. And transfer of information is important, but it's not enough.
Yes.
We need to live it out. We need to give something for people to see and emulate.
Yeah. We can't land it any better than that. So good job, Matthew. And thank you so much. Thank you for being so gracious and coming on here. It truly just threw him in the mix here, but you handled it like a pro. So
absolutely. It's a joy to be with you, Kris, and to enjoy the Big Igloo podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Well, hopefully we'd love to have you back again. So maybe next time I'll email you some questions.
All right. Look forward to that.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. We'll see you later.